morning, everyone. We're just waiting for a few attendees to join us. So we're just waiting for a few more to come in. Thank you for joining us today for the Chamber Wales webinar. So I'm Rachel Flanagan, and we've got a fantastic panel this morning, which is very exciting. I hope some of you are waiting to go to the beach after this, because I know we've had amazing weather, which has been lovely. So we've got Mark Siddons, which he's from Cook and Arkwright. We've got Gemma, which is the COO from Alchemist and Safe Contractor, Kevin from Paramount, and Cecilia from she heads up the people department of Sony. So we're going to go straight in, if that's okay. We're going to start off by just doing a little bit of housekeeping. So we've got at the bottom, you'll see that there's a Q&A section and there's a chat function as well. So if we can keep the Q&A for questions only and chat section for introducing yourself now, tell us where you're from, what organisation, whereabouts in the UK you're from. We might also have people from outside the UK, so let us know where you're from if you can put your name and things into the chat now. And to kick us off before we go into our panel, we're going to ask you, if possible, to fill in a poll, which will come up in a minute. And then we'll share the results of finding a little bit about who we've got on this webinar today. So if you could fill this in, that would be great. And then we will share the results to you, and we'll be going straight in to our panelists. So I'll give you probably about 30 seconds to fill this in, and we'll then go straight in. Okay, so this is interesting. So we've got 18% of you that you're back full-time pre-pandemic working, 5% who didn't change location, 41% still working from home full-time, and 36% with the hybrid working as well. And we have got, so what are your main concerns when considering where you and your team will work in the future? Physical health and safety, 5%, mental health and well-being is a whopping 50%, and collaboration and productivity, 32% as well. So I think that will help us today on the panel just to kind of understand you know, a little bit about more of our questioning, and we'll pick that up through the panel. Just to remind you that any questions that you'd like for the panelists today, to keep that in the Q&A section. Introduce yourself in the chat if you want to share, you know, potentially like your LinkedIn profile or networking section, if you keep that to the chat there. So we're going to go straight in with Gemma. And so our question for you, Gemma, is what effect has working from home had on recruitment and company culture over the past 16 months?
No problem. So hi everyone, I'm Gemma Ashbold and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Alchemist, and we are a risk management and health and safety consultancy business. So we've been working with lots of organisations, helping them through the kind of pandemic, really from a health and safety and risk point of view. In terms of just factoring in some of the question there, the recruitment that certainly we've been doing during this pandemic, we've hired 150 people in the last 12 months. So whilst we had an initial kind of recruitment freeze, as the pandemic hit us in sort of March and April, we saw that actually our business was really, really stable and saw a really great opportunity to bring real talent into the organisation. So we had a big recruitment drive probably from about June onwards last year, to keep up with our growth aspiration. What I would say is we've had to have a real look at ourselves from a culture point of view. We had a very strong culture, very strong ENPS scores and that kind of thing. But of course, that was largely pretty much everybody was pretty much office based. So you could get your arms around everybody on a much more daily basis, in terms of the leaders, etc. And that made it much more difficult during the pandemic. Everything's remote, as everyone will talk about the whole Zoom and team meeting fatigue. And so we've had to really invest in sort of health and safety and well-being. So we've employed some health and safety, some well-being champions, trained our own people to be well-being champions, a lot more than we had. We probably had a couple in the organisation. We've got something like 25 now across the range, because we do have offices all around the UK and in North America, which would have been something we wouldn't have probably hugely focused on. We've always thought about stress and anxiety, workload, and pressure, etc. But this definitely presents a different challenge. And the other element that we've definitely noticed is we had a very team-based culture. Everyone get together, people would have social events, team things, fun things in the office, that kind of thing. And we've lost that. And whilst we've tried to do things like quizzes and escape room challenges, we've invested in all sorts of things. It's definitely caused a bit of a challenge to our culture to maintain that really strong family feel that Alchemist is all about, because we care about changing outcomes, and therefore that permeates through our culture. And so we've had to work really hard this year, this last 6 months. We've recently done our employee survey. We've got lots of feedback from that. We are moving to a much more hybrid environment so that we can get some of that culture back of being together, whilst also maintaining the flexibility. But it's definitely a challenge. I don't think it's an easy one.
Yeah, definitely. And 150 staff, that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course we would normally have taken everybody through a 2-day physical induction at our head office. So everybody would have come down. Of course, we couldn't do that. So remote inductions, we've maintained them through Teams. I would say though, it probably has meant people get up to speed a little bit slower compared to what they were previously in terms of product knowledge, business context, understanding our customers and walking in the customer's shoes. I do think it has elongated that process.
Yeah. So just out of interest then, so obviously with the current changes as well, are you doing anything different now to the induction? And are you bringing, a bit of that, face-to-face back and things?
So we definitely move into more hybrid environment.
Yeah.
We've invested in bands so that people, when they come to the office, can wear a band. Green means technically you can hug me if you should so wish. Amber is I'm being a little bit more cautious, so just respect that. Red is I'm very, very nervous, please keep your distance.
Wow, that's good.
As a visual indicator, so that it makes the conversation a little bit easier, rather than having to say to people, look, I'm really nervous, can you please step back? That's quite a difficult thing to do, even if you really know somebody.
Yeah.
So the idea behind this is a visual indicator. That means you don't have to have the conversation, but people can respect your preferences.
Yeah.
We maintain in social distance until post 16th of August, and then we obviously keep that under constant review in line with more recent changes. But also we don't want to have we managed this far without any kind of mass outbreak. We certainly don't want to be doing that at this sort of 11th hour, really. We're obviously keeping ahead of the guidelines, and we are asking people to come into hence the whole band system, is we are asking people to come back into the office, some of their induction and some of the conversation, not all of it, because we want to respect the fact that it is remote as well, but get people inducted into the culture so that you really get to know people by spending time with them physically. It's how we maintain that and maintain flexible working. So, all really important considerations, really.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. So obviously this webinar is reimagining the workplace. So we're going to go straight now over to Mark. So Mark, you've had a lot of experience over the last 16 months. What would be great to know is, have you seen businesses making decisions around their premises? What is that? And what does the future hold that you can see?
Hey, good morning all. I'm Mark Siddons from Cook and Arkwright Chartered Surveyors, working in the business space team, dealing primarily with office agency. So anything transactional, buying, selling, leasing, upsizing, downsizing, we're seeing that on a day-to-day basis and those kind of conversations happening. And really, in terms of decisions being taken by occupiers now, it can be split into two camps really. Some, large companies, some of the highest profile in the city, occupy a lot of space, adapted quite quickly to home working, and have therefore sought to return a lot of their space to the market, to reduce their property overhead and to realise, better efficiencies that way. And there's the other sector of the market, and their main decision really has been, ironically, to defer making a decision as long as possible while they kind of see what the new, kind of work environment looks like. How much space they think they're going to decrease by, or in some cases increase by.
Yeah.
And really, with government assistance and the various kind of health and safety measures we recommended, safety first approach, people have stayed back and not really done too much of anything. However, with vaccination in full swing, Freedom Day, it's happening in England, it's going to happen with us. August at current count could change. Things reopening. People have got to come back into the office. Decisions that have been put on hold for 15, 16 months can't be done so indefinitely. So we think now's decision time, really, after a long period of inactivity. And in terms of inquiries, and we have lots of conversations with landlords, and tenants out there looking. Transaction volumes are down. They're not ready to do the deal yet, but the questions they're asking, and the impression we're getting, is people are looking for less space.
Right.
30 to 50% less space. They want greater flexibility, so more break clauses, ideally shorter lease terms. And really, there's been a flight to prime. So quality accommodation is kind of featuring high in people's kind of expectations. Quite often they've got similar budget. If they're going to be reducing office footprint and space, their budget for their real estate may still be the same. So in terms of the quality of space they can expect and desire, there's more budget to do it. So quality accommodation is featuring high on people's wish list at the minute.
Yeah, and I think even from an employee experience as well, isn't it? It's like, what is the purpose now of the office? It's changing, and kind of reimagining that and making sure that the office has a purpose going forward, not so much of, is it a place where people just come to work? But that moves on nicely to you, Kev. So obviously for you guys, it'd just be interesting to understand, how's the last 16 months been for you? I suppose you've been really right at the front of all of this change as well, and you're seeing things behind closed doors, aren't you, in multiple sectors? So it'd be good to understand, how can people, move to agile working? What do they need to do for their spaces moving forward, and what you're seeing through your experience?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rachel. Yes, I'm Kevin Mashford, one of the directors of Paramount. So you're absolutely right. We've seen a huge shift. It's been the biggest working from home experiment that the world has ever seen. So it's been brilliant in terms of data that we've gathered over the past kind of 18 months, 2 years. And I guess the start of that journey for people is to really understand what agile working is. And we split it into three categories, really. It's you can work when you want, how you want, and where you want. And that poses a massive problem for people who've had these traditional offices for many years. You've got 5-10 year leases that you're on. So it's about exactly what you just asked, and it's about managing agile working, really, to accommodate for all those needs. And again, I break that down into three kind of headings, really. You've got equity, engagement, and ease. So equity, what I mean by that is you've got to strive for inclusion despite location. So you're still going to have people home working, and you're also going to have people working in very different environments within the office. So then you've got to engage. So as part of the design process, you've got to have you've got to design experiences across a range of settings that are really human and engaging. So it's really key to the design process when you're designing these agile spaces. And then you've got ease of use, because what you don't want is for people to struggle to then, if you come in with a laptop and plonk it down in the breakout because you want to work quietly or whatever, you've got to have a physical experience where it's just easy to use equipment and the technology. And technology is very much key to this. We use things like this thing, which is it sits on a dock. It's a mobile power point, so you can literally sit on a sofa, and even if you want to sit there for a couple of hours, you can plug your laptop into it. There's no plug socket there, it doesn't matter. So all of these technological advances and things is really got to be a key consideration. And again, you've also got to, people have been, lots of people have been saying, oh, they've been really productive from home, and I guess they've shifted the way they're working themselves. And actually, joy is a big thing that you can't, you must include in any workspace. And sometimes, like for me, when I was working at home, my wife and 3 boys, I quite like them. So that brought me joy. I quite like the people that I live with. But obviously, some people are in shared houses that, they've recently met these people and stuff like that. But an engaging workspace needs to bring joy. There's certain things. You don't decide to go for a walk around an industrial estate. You decide to go for a walk around a coastal path or mountain range. But so bringing joy into an agile workspace is just bringing those environments into people's lives that make them want to be in spaces. One of the research pieces has been that people are 12% more productive when they have a feeling of joy, and actually that's a bigger increase in productivity than a pay rise is. So just bring joy into people's lives. No one sees a butterfly and stands on it, do they? It's because they love it, and they love it and things like that. So yeah, it's very much managing those, because there's 3 criteria of making people's workspace enjoyable, engaging, and a space that they want to be. And Gemma touched on those things about engagement. That the inviting people back to the workplace is important. Then the engagement is equally important. And those things that Gemma's put in place in terms of the wristbands, that's such a great way of making people feel comfortable. There's different ways of doing that in terms of designing spaces, so that if you do want some more private working and want to stay away, well, then you go and sit yourself in that area. The wristband is a great one where you're not changing your physical environment as much. But yes, they're all very good things. But with that sort of invitation, engagement, and then expectation, if you get that process right, I believe that you're going to see, again, based on the research that we've been doing and our partners have been doing, 88% of people are wanting to get back to the workplace because they miss that collaboration, and they overthink things when they're at home and they're not with the people. And there's just those water cooler moments, those coffee machine moments where they promote productivity.
No, definitely. I think the office now is, what we're seeing as well behind the scenes is people are making quite a lot of change as well. So I know, Mark, you touched upon it as, you're having more inquiries and not so much of the commitment stage yet. But there's definitely change going on behind the scenes, isn't it? Of how can we make this space more collaborative? How can we make the space more inviting to bring people back? How can we make it more safer as well? So
it can't detract from that company culture. That is so important. We've talked about that before. You cannot maintain that strong company culture on Teams calls and Zoom calls like that. You just can't.
Okay, great. So Cecilia, you obviously are from Sony, the manufacturing. So you guys have been full on through the pandemic. You can't work from home. So, what has home working and the experience of the pandemic taught you? And any advice that you can give to the people on the webinar today for where, they can't potentially do hybrid if they've got, people out there on the plant and things?
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Cecilia Fritz. I am the senior manager of what we call the people department at Sony in Pencoed. So we are a manufacturing facility, as Rachel pointed out. So a bit different to other organisations that are able just to work from home as on when. So for us, majority, we've got about 600 staff and 500 of them are unable to work from home, roughly around that. So the first thing that we did when we when this all started, is that we made sure that people felt safe. We communicated very often. And I think you can't really over communicate when people have got so much uncertainty, both in their private life, but also in their work life. So the key for us was to keep people safe when they're in the factory or in the facility. So what we did was we carried out a comprehensive risk assessment to start with, just to see where are the key things we really need to focus on. And what we did is we divided the facility into different zones. So depending on where you work, you would have a different entrance, different exit. You would have a different breakout area, even different toilets. So really, if there had been any kind of infection internally, we could sort of really narrow that down and use our internal track and trace, if you wish, to really find out what was going on. Luckily, we've not had any internal infection, so it must have worked somehow. What we've also done is we introduced testing quite early on, sort of October time, for all of our team players, as we call them, so our employees. And also things like face coverings. Before it was mandatory, we had that in place, and hand sanitizer, gloves, etc. as well, because obviously we have people working on the same sort of equipment and tools, so we make sure that we had very strict sort of cleaning protocols from the start, and that has really helped us. But what I would say in terms of this situation is all around the communication, making sure the communication gets fed down, and it's important from even to our MD and our directors, but equally from the team leaders that are down there dealing with the manufacturing facility. It's very important that they know what's going on, and they give that sense of reassurance to our employees at all times. Then the second question in terms of the working from home. So like I said, we do have about 100 people who can actually work from home, at least some or part of the week. And I think that's, in terms of what it's taught us, is that especially sort of historically, manufacturing is not seen as a place where you can work from home. But for the roles that are able to work from home, it has taught us that it's actually possible. From speaking to employees, I think majority of them would prefer that sort of hybrid working. But it's absolutely taught us, I think if we'd come up with a proposal maybe sort of two years ago, before the pandemic, of we should work from home, it probably would have been met and with a bit of sort of reluctance, but I think it's taught us that is actually possible. So I think the next stage is kind of looking into those other things, that what is actually possible, because we got those kind of preconceived conceptions, haven't we, of what's possible and what's not. So now is kind of what else could be possible while still maintaining the same or even better productivity.
Yeah. And Gemma, are you finding there's certain sectors that are taking more risk, they're more agile compared to other sectors? Like, what are you seeing as trends in the sectors out there at the moment?
Yeah, so we advise a lot of different sectors. Our customer base is across multiple sectors, and so there is a definite different approach. If you're in construction and you're running a construction project, you are all very similar to Cecilia there. Manufacturing, you can't work from home if you're in that kind of environment, and so people are getting quite creative with different ways of thinking about it. So, everyone's applying risk assessments. We spend a lot of time advising people how to do different types of risk assessments, how to keep those risk assessments live, make sure that they're constantly reviewing from a COVID point of view, the implications for their workforce and members of the public. Which again is very different then to the professional services sector, who absolutely, more often than not, depending on what they do, a lot more can work from home. Call centres, some of our customers, run large call centres, and it's challenged their thinking around a little bit like us potentially. If somebody had said to us, work from home completely, we would have gone, no, we can't possibly do that. Productivity will get hit. not sure, you know, people will be doing the work, etc. GDPR, how will we manage all of those different things? So COVID exacerbated and brought forward an inevitability that we would have ended up having to face into. And lots of the customers that we deal with, that's what they're kind of saying, is it's forced them to get into that and therefore think about their work-life balance for their staff in a much more holistic way than they probably would previously. Yeah, there is a definite sector by sector approach. Some sectors are much more affected than others in terms of, you know, the physical limitations of what they can and can't do. And so if, you know, as per any kind of risk assessment, if you can't maintain the 2-meter distance rule, or put in what's reasonably practicable, so everyone's having to use their own judgment rather than, you know, we have to follow the guidelines to the letter, because in some cases it's just not necessarily practical and to keep kind of working. But yeah, there is a definite sector by sector approach.
Okay, yeah, great. Okay, so we've got a couple of other questions. We'd be just to remind everyone on this webinar that we've got a Q&A section at the bottom. So if you've just joined us now, any questions that you want for the panelists, we'll be going through those shortly. And just introduce yourself and share any contact details or your LinkedIn on the chat function as well. So this is for the panelists really. So some businesses have been in survival mode and having to make cost saving decisions. So, you know, the pandemic has been awful for some businesses, while, you know, I suppose positive for others. So what impact is this likely to have on longer term on the business? Do you think, you know, what measures can we put in place if those businesses haven't done well through the pandemic and there is budget constraints? Kevin, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, there's a couple of real ways of thinking about this really, because what we saw initially was exactly what Mark was saying earlier, with people looking to downsize and things like that. And then as and when people have done, when they've engaged with us to do workplace analysis or they've done their own employee engagement surveys, you've got this tricky balance there between home working and office working. Now, the problem with that, let's say you've got 2/3 want to work from home 2/3 of the time. Most people are saying we're going to work Mondays and Fridays from home. So that then puts you in a situation where, well, okay, so Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I need the same amount of space as I had before. Yeah. So actually, you know, there's this balance. Then it comes back down to the management of agile working space, really. But yeah, so there's a short term and a long term view out there at the moment, which is up for debate, which is, do we downsize, or do we actually just, you know, reshape the space that we've got so people can work more agile and accommodate for those moments when people actually do all want to return to the office? Yeah, you know, we've seen a massive increase in revenue to our business because of those shift in working patterns, and different businesses going online as well.
Okay. So Mark, are you seeing, you know, any changes out there? Especially, you know, we've got quite a few people here today. I've just been having a look through the chat. We've got some small business owners as well. So what options out there have they got as well, especially if cost is, you know, key as well? How is the market, you know, and is there choice? Is there places that exist out there that you're seeing?
In terms of availability and demand, at the minute, given the last kind of 16 months, demand has been very low, and there is supply generally increasing supply of stock. So the consensus is people feel there's got to be deals to be done. You know, rents have to be dropping, values have to be decreasing because, you know, market forces. The reality is, in fact, that, you know, rents have remained pretty robust. They haven't dropped. So there's not the automatic savings for these small businesses that, you know, people think there might be, because I think from a landlord's point of view, they feel, you know, the toughest part's done. If they've endured 15, 16 months now with the rents as they are, things should be getting easier now with a return to, you know, a bit of normality. And there's a bit of a wait and, you know, a bit of a standoff really between tenants and occupiers who want a bit of a deal, and landlords obviously want to protect their rental tones in their building. So it's difficult really. And then the choices are, you could work from home, it works in the short term, great. Your balance sheet's going to look a lot better without that, those office overheads in there, your real estate costs. But as touched on earlier, those bonds which are formed begin to weaken, very hard to train and retain staff, monitoring and, legal profession, for example, there's a lot of liability if someone's not closely monitored, and, there's a lot of problems that can arise. Whilst it may look cheaper on, in the budget, it could be short-sighted to suddenly, retract, work from home and try and save money that way. So, not easy, frankly. There's a lot of elements to consider.
Yeah, and what are you seeing, Gemma? Are you seen any, demand your sort of side with the sectors that you're working on and co-working spaces?
In terms of, we get the cost reduction question asked to us quite a lot, because obviously part of what Alchemist provides is HR support and advice, as well as health and safety. And so less about the working spaces, more about, how can we advise people through cost reduction initiatives, whether that's redundancy, how can we engage with our staff around shorter working or reducing benefits, etc., as a way of cost saving mechanisms. So obviously we'll approach that on the basis of trying to keep the economy going as much as possible, keep as many people in jobs as possible, but we'll advise people through that process. And I have to say, certainly, and we typically advise a lot of small businesses, and probably I would say in the last 6 months, I would say that inquiry has come up significantly more than it probably did. I think as people are preparing that furlough is ending, whilst furlough was alive and kicking, people were clearly taking advantage of the scheme, understandably so. But now, if people's businesses haven't therefore then recovered, they're starting to think about, well, what are my other options? Downsizing my premises, downsizing my staff, reducing benefits, any way of keeping going, really. The kind of survival mentality, I would say, is definitely kicking in. And I would say at this point in time, construction is heavily the sector that's massively been hit by that.
Right.
We saw quite recently here. WRW has recently kind of gone into liquidation, and you're seeing a little bit more of that, unfortunately. So I would imagine it, from an economic point of view, we're seeing a little bit more uncertainty coming through now.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to go straight in now. We've got some questions from people who are on the webinar today. So Karen Fleming has asked, what priority are organisations giving to planning space for the purposes of collaboration?
I'll take that one if you want.
Go on then, Kev. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot, actually. We're seeing a big increase in people seeing the value of workplace analysis and workplace design, specifically around collaboration. And a lot of it is down to, so universities nowadays are destination places for people to go and have collaboration with their tutors and their fellow students. And the learning is very much done a lot at home. So, and then there's a generational aspect of those postgraduate people coming through into the workplace and have that same expectation. So the workplace being very much a hub for collaboration, and then sort of consolidated working either at home or in quiet zones. So workplace analysis helps that a hell of a lot. And we can put lots of kind of data and research behind each decision that we make for people. And
are you seeing different levels of organisations making this a priority over others? For example, again, we've got some people here today that are small, medium business owners. So I don't want to leave them out versus the big universities with a big budget.
Awesome.
How are you seeing that?
We're absolutely seeing it across the board. We recently did we moved a legal recruitment consultancy from 6,500 square foot into 3,500 square foot with the same amount of people.
Right, yeah.
So they didn't drop any headcount, but they made their space more collaborative. There was a bar, there was just one switch which turned the whole lighting system from day office, work mode to party mode. That's how they engage with their staff, and that's what makes them tick. The breakfast bar turns into a gin bar. It absolutely, things that everyone from the small business right up to the bigger blue chip companies.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously this webinar today is reimagining the workplace. And, you know, I suppose, you know, we've all been through the pandemic, the future now. I mean, what I can see as well is that the office environment has got to be an employee experience for
Absolutely.
part of your recruitment process now, for attracting and retaining the, you know, the staff of the future for these businesses. And are you seeing that out there in multiple sectors as well?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. It's exactly what you're saying. It's a destination space for people.
Yeah.
You know, and you often talk about brand and culture and things like that. And there's a big difference between people, you know, slapping their brand on their walls, but actually not considering what our values as a business are. So the actual office environment needs to reflect the culture and not just the brand. You know, the two very different things in many ways. So having that cultural experience of a business for clients and employees alike is really key.
Yeah. So Cecilia, I'm interested because obviously you are, you know, a key employer in Wales manufacturing. Is there changes that you've made to your space or plans for change as well, for more agile working and more I suppose, you know, inspirational space as well? Are you seeing that as you know, an area for you there at Sony?
Yeah, we haven't actually changed. I mean, there's a space in South. There's no sort of plans to change there, because we're hoping that people will start coming back to the offices, even though we're not planning for that to be full-time to the offices. Yeah. We've had to make some adaptations at the beginning to make sure that the 2-meter rule, but it's definitely that. And I think there's more generally, even if it wasn't for the pandemic, I think there's more of that need and more expectations from the new workforce basically coming in to expect a bit more of a, you know, a chill out room and, you know, those kind of things. Yeah. We're fortunate because we already have a gym, we have a table tennis room, we have got some good things like that hopefully will start back up when we're able to. But yeah, there's definitely more of a demand for us. So there's definitely more that we need to do on that and come up with some ideas basically.
Okay, thank you. So this is a good one from Chris Bray. So what changes, if any, have the panel experienced in the way the office or workplace is adapting to align with the flexibility that comes with the working from home? So, you know, are we seeing changes of office working hours, dress code? Like, that's quite interesting. So what is the future dress code? That might be a good sort of angle for us to talk about. And the flexible breaks for lunch and things. So would anybody like to share their experience on that and what, again, they think is the future?
Yeah, sure, happy to take that one. Or you go for it, Kev.
All right, I'll make mine short so you can chip in as well. I mean, I think all bets are off in terms of the traditional office environment. Working hours, you know, 5 days a week, 9 to 5 is gone. It's gone. You know, in the majority of cases. As for dress codes, well, I'm still wearing a shirt today, and yeah, I did walk into the office with a pair of shorts on the other day, and I was asked if I had a license for these things hanging down. Yeah, I mean, I think people have become more comfortable in, you know, less formal attire. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, is this also part of, you know, being a true leader as well? Is being yourself and showing, you know, a little bit more of who you are with your shorts on and things.
Well, any change in the environment has got to be a top-down thing, isn't it? Really, you've got to embrace. If you're going to embrace change, you've got to have a leadership team that does exactly that and makes the path for the rest of people.
Yeah. So Jem, what are you seeing out there? Interesting.
Yeah, I think the last 12 months has definitely blurred the lines between work and home, isn't it? You know, most people will be able to recall having Teams or Zoom calls and their children appear or their pets appear, etc. And it's kind of humanized people. Because people have a perception, particularly of leaders, and they kind of see them in their normal habitat, etc. And I sort of feel that's carried on then since into back, as people have gone back into the office. Because you're working in a hybrid, you can have a team meeting where you'll have some people in the office, but you'll still have some people at home who, their children do appear in the call, etc., and everyone says hello. And so I agree with Kevin, really, that the going backwards doesn't seem that would be remotely acceptable anymore, in the sense of, everyone is all office dressed and works 9 to 5 exactly.
Yeah.
We do have customer hours, so we talk to our teams about, we need to be available for our customers. This is our core kind of service. Customers at the heart of everything we do, and everybody understands that. But it doesn't mean people can work flexibly, as long as you've got cover to be able to answer customer queries and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's challenging, isn't it? Because, Kev, you're all for, working hours don't exist, and it's all about the output. But also, being in a service industry, it's very different as well. Where you have to go and clean the office at a certain time and things. So I would challenge that of the service industry. We can't make too much changes. We can work smarter, we can work leaner, and certainly management teams can work from home more on a hybrid model. But if we need our bins changed every day. We need all of those services to run our local communities. And unfortunately, we can't do that through Teams or Zoom and, working in, those types of spaces.
Do you not see that maybe? I mean, I very much see that as, sometimes, certainly like you guys, in terms of going into cleaning workplaces, you're kind of like the hidden member of the team. And actually, I quite like to embrace everything to do with the workplace, and the cleaners are part of that. We take for granted that we walk in the morning and our desks are clean and the bins are empty, but actually being able to say hello to the cleaner, it doesn't bother me if there's a cleaner emptying bins around me and wiping a couple of work surfaces. Is part of the team, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. But we've still got to do it around certain times, because it's the customer that dictates that sometimes as well, isn't it? And I think more presence for cleaners is vital, because of it's going to show how safe it is. It's going to help people coming back to the office. I like to call them hygienists now as well. So, really making sure that they look the part and they've got the right kit, because that makes us all feel safe. And that's part of, the employer responsibilities as well. But Cecilia, we've got a question that was sent in to us beforehand. So I'm conscious, obviously, on our poll at the beginning, mental health was quite high. Over 50% of people were more concerned about mental health and things, and it's definitely getting discussed more at boardroom, isn't it, as well? So what's your thoughts on where from a people side, what more can we do as leadership teams to help and make mental health more talkable and change the culture as well? What ideas have you got?
Yeah, so no, absolutely, it's so important. I mean, it started to be talked about before COVID even, but I think COVID has really brought it out even more so. So from us, what we do is we work really closely with our manager. Obviously, I'm in HR, so I do know a lot of our staff, etc. However, it's the managers, the team leaders, they're the ones that know people the most. So it's really important as a business that you work with the managers that are closest to the majority of the people, to actually inform them of how you spot things, how you spot if somebody is maybe struggling a little bit at the moment, and really don't try to do it in such a formal way. Because I think quite often somebody is off, you do a return to work and you fill in the questions and that's it, you submit it to HR and you've done your bit. But actually it's more about following up on that. We work really closely with our occupational health as well, and we are in a fortunate position where we can offer our staff private counselling, because recognising it can be a bit of a challenge to get that at the moment because of the high demand. But what we did recently was we made a booklet. So it was about well-being, but incorporating mental health. So it wasn't just about physical health or eat right and those kind of things. So we signposted people. So say, for instance, somebody is suffering with panic attacks, or maybe is feeling particularly lonely at the moment, which I think is a massively increased since the COVID pandemic. So we wrote a little bit about that, just some sort of self-help, but also really signposted where they can get help with local charities and also internally. So, mental health first aiders and everyone who's sort of qualified in that. Also, obviously, their line manager, HR team, but that might not be the people they want to go to. So to really communicate, again, coming back to that, communicate to your workforce, we're here, this is what you can do, because some people just feel they're not in that space to actually go and find the information themselves. So that's what we've done.
Good. Okay, we've had another question come in. So obviously with us, the future office space, and so what, from Jeremy Rees, what performance management changes do you think may be needed to monitor those who mostly work remotely? Also, does the panel have any ideas of what measures they may take to ensure commitment and motivation linked to recognition, reward, and effort? Who would like to take that?
Yeah, I can speak again if you would.
Yeah, go on. This one's for you, Cecilia.
So I think it's I think initially we saw a bit of, how do I know the person I'm managing, how do I know that he or she is actually working when I'm expecting them to work? And that was that sort of level of, do I trust them or not? So that's really, I guess, being brought to a head where people have had those conversations or not. But we haven't seen any major issues with that. But I think it's so important, again, to keep that communication, and more so now when we can bring people back, not right now, but when we're starting to bring people back and having those conversations. But in terms of performance management, I think it's, again, making sure you keep in touch with your with the person who's working from home. Because if you only have a weekly one-to-one with them, you're not really going to have a good sort of sense check of where they are performance related wise, and also they might feel a bit undervalued or a bit forgotten about. So for me, again, it comes down to that communication side of things, and just sometimes just taking a time out just to check in how people are doing, rather than just focusing on, is the project on track or not? Just having those kind of informal chats or even informal team building kind of things, but not sort of in a go-karting for a day.
So Kev, are you using any performance management tools, or how are you managing your workforce?
So we're about to co-write a white paper with Smith and Williamson from accountants, who they've introduced a tech dashboard for this reason, and so that'll be coming out in the next couple of months, actually. But those KPIs that, again, traditionally people have had to shift, because you're not kind of looking over the shoulder of your team of people. As Cecilia said, I mean, productivity is sometimes is clear in so much as, well, if the job is getting done, you generally see the result of the job being done. But I say the tech dashboard thing is a big thing that's coming out of some of the big accountancy firms, and so we're going to co-write a white paper on that very shortly, and that'll be coming out. I'll be on my LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's positive. And I think, it's as simple as, does everybody in your organization have 1 or 2 or 3 KPIs? That's kind of, that they wear that hat for, isn't it? And sometimes it's just as simple as that as well, having the dashboard ownership. Clear communication. Like for us, we do one-to-ones on a regular basis, but it's a coaching style as well. It's always trying to get ownership from within. But ultimately, you've just got to have the right people, haven't you, as well? Because you can't do any of that if you haven't got the right people. What are you facing there, Gemma? Because obviously 150 people coming on board, that's a lot of management behind the scenes. Any kind of tips for everyone today on the panel on how you manage the performance side behind the scenes when they are remote.
Yeah, we've got 750 employees here in the UK and in North America, all have now turned to 100% remote working. And we definitely had that concern, kind of thinking, what was going to happen. And it's interesting, it's a bit of a tale of two halves, really. I think during the pandemic, everybody was so, had that sort of probably siege mentality of wanting to keep the business afloat, and they really bought into the company and the culture, our CEO and the leaders. If anything, people went the other way, and were kind of working over for everything to just make sure that the company didn't get into trouble or anything financially. What we're seeing now is we are starting to see some of that slip back. And so we have had good conversations with all. The key to this really is the line management group, how the people who are really connected to the team on a day-to-day basis, however many levels in the hierarchy an organization may have, is around what are all the important inputs. Sometimes it's not always about the outputs. Because the inputs are there and the right behaviors are there. The outputs will come, whatever that may be. So we have good conversations, and then it's how they have coaching conversations around some of those input metrics in the one-to-ones that they have, whether they do side-by-side coaching, one-to-ones to talk about performance, but also other things, because life is more than just work. So other things that are going on in their personal lives that are affecting it, anxiety, stress, etc. And then making sure then we've got programs around people who are struggling, to have some really clear guidelines of how we are going to help them, and therefore also what we're expecting them to do. So communication and being really quite clear about expectations is really important.
Yeah.
And in some cases, when we've got some real performance concerns, we have asked people to come back into the office for some intensive bit of coaching for a period of time. It's all quite safe to do. But yeah, I think the input metrics are probably been the thing that's kept us going, that mean we haven't seen our performance dip.
Yeah. And have you found benefits in bringing them back into the office at, when you've needed?
Yeah, because what we've been finding is, especially if they were quite new and their performance wasn't getting there, they just missed that one-to-one coaching and that ability to say, I just don't get it. Can you please explain that to me again? You can do that face-to-face.
Yeah.
It's much harder. It's a bit more transactional on Teams or Zoom.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing real benefits then when people have that little bit of intense coaching, whether that's product knowledge or some skills with what they're doing with the actual job itself. And then it's easy to reference. Remember that conversation we had? Let's keep trying this, etc. And we are then seeing people start to leverage as a result. So it's just about adapting our style and kind of going, it's not a one size fits all for everybody either.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's been probably leaders' most challenging 16 months, isn't it? And as we come to sort of the last stage now of this webinar, what I'd like to do is go round the panel to really sum up, the key takeaways from today, reimagining the workplace. So what is the future going to look like? So if we start with Mark, so what's your gut feeling, Mark, of what the new workplace is going to be like for the future?
I think typically people are going to be in less space. They're going to want a bit more from it. I think better specified, higher quality office accommodation is, top of the agenda. That's going to be better M&E, better finishings, more attractive furniture, collaborative areas, breakout areas, all things like that, which will help create a experience and encourage people to come back in. Some people might be happy enough working at home, but the boss wants them in. The multitude of reasons we've discussed on this. Pleasant environment is going to help get them back in and get them engaged. So I think that's important. I know Kevin will have lots of first-hand knowledge of how to interact with tenants and landlords to achieve this, because obviously there's a lot of costs. People want flexibility. So there's ways and means to kind of get this higher spec with a bit of joined up thinking between the two parties. And I think just generally on a market point of view, I think we should see an increase in transactional volume by the end of the year, and certainly Q1 next year, when people really kind of know it's decision-making time. They've been out, they've taken the staff surveys, they know what they want, they're out there ready to make a decision and commit to it. And then just one eye really on rents and how future demand will influence that. At the minute, as mentioned earlier, there is a bit of a standoff. time will tell how that evolves.
Yeah, great. Okay, Cecilia.
Yeah, so I think the key thing for me, as I mentioned, our office is not likely to sort of change physically that much, and our factory certainly isn't there either. However, because of the change in working from home, I would say from me, the key thing is what else is possible, as I mentioned earlier. So we didn't think working from home was possible. So what else is there that we don't think is possible? So sort of look into those options, probably be a bit creative in those ways, rather than just sort of staying stagnant.
Yeah.
But also because that is also going to be the expectations from the next generation. They will definitely not want to come into that 9 to 5 sort of environment. So I'm certainly hoping, and I believe that that's not going to be what will happen, because then, what was the point in the first place to sort of implement all these things? So for me, it's just looking at what else would be possible in the environment that we're in.
Great. Gemma?
Yeah, again, quite similar really. So I think hybrid working is here to stay. So I don't think 100% remote working is here to stay, but hybrid working is definitely here to stay.
Yeah.
I think having, we have a big field sales force, so normally we would be sending people all around the country in their cars, etc. I think, the way of the world thinking about sustainability, I think people will be more happy to have virtual meetings, and they're easy to fit in and setting time aside. So I think the way we kind of sell and our kind of, sort of commercial business model potentially will probably change a little bit there. And I think a lot more emphasis around well-being and bringing yourself to work. And that, I think we gained an awful lot from COVID in that respect. And I think we will try and help that continue. We're going to trial this thing with the bands as a way of just, making it easier for people to have those conversations, right? Making people feel safe, but not feel awkward. And yeah, much more focus around that sort of mental health and well-being, probably more so. It's definitely exacerbated that, I would say.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you. And Kev, what's
yeah, as I said earlier, we've got to strive for inclusion, despite location. We've got to make the workplace a destination for collaboration, interaction, and all of those things. And most importantly, we've got a design to bring joy into our workplace.
A bit of joy.
Bring
and a bit of bars and beer sounds good. We need to go to that place. Okay, so that comes to a close for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on. We would like to thank, obviously, Chambers Wales for letting us put this on today. We've had a great turnout. Thank you so much to the panelists for helping us, obviously giving up your time to help us today. And hopefully everybody's going to be going to the beach later on. So enjoy the weather. Have a good day. Connect with us on LinkedIn and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.